Hi, I am Dr. Loren M. Hill. I am your academic career coach. Thank you for joining us today. And I have with us Monique Antoinette Stennis, MBA. And Monique is very accomplished. She is an executive. She's held multiple administrative appointments. She specializes in brand management at the institutional and organizational level, but has also started to really work with individuals around brand management, coaching them in that area. And she's kind of come to that place because of her experience as a minority woman in spaces that are often occupied by people from the dominant culture. So Monique has been in the healthcare industry. She's been in retail industry. She's currently in higher ed. And so all of these perspectives and even more really inform her as she seeks to put out a great communication from institutions. And she'll get into some of that today. So thank you so much for joining us today, Monique.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't we just jump right in? I know that you, for many years, were in retail with a major, national, dare I say, international company, and you were in HR. And so what were some of the things that you saw that, from an executive perspective, that maybe people did right, or maybe there were some missteps?
Yeah, so when I worked at the retail organization, I will say it was much more supply chain management. I did have a little bit of cross in between training and development. So I definitely want to set that tone. Some of the things that I saw that at that particular time in my career that people, let's talk about what people did right. I feel like in that particular time, I worked with people who understood the value of relationships and the value of internal customer service. And so what I mean by internal customer service is understanding that the people that we work with, we serve. And how does that look like when they have expectations of what we should do? And so understanding that you might have the overall customer service that you need to give in an organization. And of course, in retail, that was something that was a given, but how did we serve the people that we worked? And I felt like that team really understood what service to each other meant. And I think in showing that, it made the work not only fun, do I even dare say fun, but it was energy and there was synergy that existed because of people being in service to others. When I look back and I think about not necessarily if it was wrong, sometimes I think it's misinformed, is that a lot of times we limit ourselves in doing things because we may say it's not a part of our job description. And I felt like at that particular time in my career, there were a lot of people that were really caught on, I am only going to do what is on the paper. And that's very limiting. It's limiting to a point where if all you're doing is what's on paper, then you are not leveraging and taking the opportunity to show those other skills that you may have that can help an organization. And so one of the things that I would do in training as a manager is always remind people that we are replaceable, believe it or not. It doesn't matter at what level we are, and that we should always look for an opportunity to show what we do, even if it's beyond the scope of our work.
So that's great. So the takeaway from ending, how those match nicely with the organization's mission and customer service, right? So while we are currently in higher ed, I think some of those same principles would apply and are transferable, right? So knowing the organization's mission, being able to work with others in the team, and really understanding the service that you are providing to the customer. And in these cases, it's often students. The other thing is, sounds like missed opportunities to showcase your talent or strengths in a way that aren't necessarily articulated in your job description. And I know that can go, either really well or really bad, because I find that when I'm working coaching folks, sometimes they're like, I am already doing too much. Like when I signed up for this faculty position or administrative position, none of this was in my job description, but now they're asking me to do more and more and more. So I think when it comes to that, it's really about being strategic and being able to balance and showcase your talents in a way that don't burn you out or exhaust you. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Hill, because what I am not saying is anyone should burn themselves out. What I am saying is that, I'll go back to this. I have had about 3 or 4 career changes, and I'm a firm believer that many of us have had. I am not an expert and don't know the studies behind it, but when making a career change, we know not only one thing that we should have is education as well as experience. And so I'm coming from a place of, if you are in HR and you want to get into marketing, what are some things that you can do at your current place that will demonstrate and show your marketing skills? But thank you for clarifying, because definitely I am not, I don't want anyone to have to work and do more and not get compensated or recognized for it, but to always look at, there's opportunities to showcase your talents.
Yes, absolutely. And that you said a couple of key words: compensation and recognition, right? And so taking some initiative around some of the projects that you may be on a committee, or someone invites you to be on a committee, and really being able to communicate to your manager, your supervisor, look what I was able to do with this opportunity. So all good stuff, all good stuff. Now, let's move on a little bit in your career. And you were with a pretty major healthcare industry corporation. And so what were some of the things that you saw there that worked well for the institution and the individuals, and some of the things that might not have worked so well?
Well, so I'll start again with working well. What I really saw, so that particular organization was a nonprofit organization, and it was a huge organization by way of the output, but a small group of people that did the work. And what I thought that we did well was rely on each other to be creative. When it came to creative ideas, we didn't have to go through bureaucracy to get it done. It was either, you pitch it. If someone said it sounds good, then you pretty much own it, make it happen. And so there was continuous space to be able to say, hey, I would like to see this happen. Can we do it? If it made sense to our mission and the values of our organization. And it's funny, so I have to say I'm a cheerleader for this organization. When we talk about doing wrong, I don't necessarily want to say that this organization did anything wrong, but I think that the organization had a hard time reaching the capacity of their market. And for that reason, that brought on challenges to the point that it's my understanding that they have gone out of business, and they were just a tremendous value to the community, but still needed more of a piece of the market to be successful and continue on.
Mm. So it sounds to me like some of the, again, transferable skills that you had and you were able to leverage were really the interpersonal skills. And this place gave you the opportunity to brainstorm and pitch ideas and provide you with some support, as well as the team. So it sounded like this was a very safe workspace and, dare I say, innovative, right? And so in terms of how you talked about, and I am familiar with this organization, so I too am, sorry to see that it's no longer around. But I think that this is what happens with businesses, right? So for whatever reasons that come across, whether they've grown too big or they've gotten too small, or resources allocations, and we see this in higher ed as well, right? Is not every institution that's here today is going to be here tomorrow.
Right.
And places have come and gone, and new places will come up. But I think what I'm hearing you say is it's really important to have that space where you can come talk about ideas and be supportive, and even do SWOT analysis so that you really truly understand what the threats are, where the weaknesses are. And as someone who is woman and BIPOC, we know that the research says that having women in leadership positions strengthens organizations. And you know all about that because you have an MBA. And I think that we need spaces where diversity of thought is welcome so that the business can continue to go on.
Right, right. And one of the things that you mentioned, Dr. Hill, in your recap and mentioning the innovation piece of it, I think that we were a creative, innovative organization because of us being small and a small number of us. And I had a supervisor that was one of the best supervisors I reported to, who just really poured into the ideas that her team came up with. In fact, I have to say that reporting to her gave me another sense of leadership. A leadership in the sense of you don't have to have a leadership that's domineering and this is what we're going to do and no room for creativity, as opposed to everyone at the table and saying, how do we do the very best and be the very best for our market? And in fact, I have to say, regardless of the organization no longer being here, that is one of a few organizations that I can say that I've worked at where I can walk away knowing that we did good work.
And that's important, right? So as we think about organizations and individuals, we really have to be aware of what's good for us, right? So you moved on from that organization with a full-throated endorsement and support from the leadership team there. And they were like, you know what, you got good stuff to offer, go out into the world. And we don't always see that, right? That people support you as you grow and spread your wings, and they support you not by kicking you out the nest, but really saying, you know what, you've got a lot to offer, and maybe this is not the place for you to be anymore. You've done all you can do here. And so you left there and you moved into higher ed, and you started in one position, and because you were able to demonstrate great capacity in that position, it ended up being turned into something else. And this can sometimes happen for us, is people will create spaces for us, whether that's administrative or faculty or staff. And so what I know about you is that every position you ever held, you represent with excellence. You are very polished. You are not just there for yourself. You see yourself as an ambassador, for people who can't be in the room. So in your position now, you are head of diversity at this major university, and I know that you will get out there and be on the front lines so that you're active in terms of things for, moving things forward, moving the conversation forward, not just for students, but for faculty and staff, and holding these safe spaces. And I know that sort of DEI is a sort of new term, and places can give a lot of lip service to it. And now there's even another couple of letters added after that. But I'm wondering, as someone who is in leadership at an academic institution, higher ed, in a DEI space, what could you tell faculty and administrators about how to really be able to represent themselves and others at this inclusivity conversation?
I think the best way to represent themselves and others is to sit down and have conversations. There is nothing that can take the place of just anecdotal stories. Just within the last 2 weeks of coming back from the break, I've had conversations with coaches of the football team, professors in our College of Arts and Sciences, and all of those conversations, it has been about our students and what they are going through and what we are identifying, and sitting down and talking about how do we best be there for them. And I think those conversations are important, because depending on where you're at the university or at the academic level, you might find that what you think is a solution is not necessarily a solution. So for example, I've been in meetings where people have said, oh, well, let's just have an event because we can bring community together. Well, that's always good. There's always an opportunity to bring community together. But what if I said, from talking to our football coaches, just being present at a team game, or just coming through at practice and being there and showing that you care and that there's representation, that goes a long way. And so I don't think we necessarily get that information through emails and when we talk, but I think when we come together, have a meeting and talk about what's going on in the lives of our students, then that's when you get the real stories and understand how you can have a greater impact in our students' lives.
Great, great. So people might say, okay, this is all great. What does this have to do with me getting a promotion? And I would say that the more you understand where you are, the more likely it is for you to make connections, to be able to understand the politics of your campus, to have conversations about, global issues and how those issues impact your campus and your students and your administrators. And so I love that you're talking about talking, right? There are certain things that we can communicate via email, or back in the day, it was a memorandum. And now we want to be mindful that we do have these dialogues, sitting across the table from someone or virtually across the table, but there's really no great substitute for talking when you can't.
No, there isn't. And even since being here and everywhere I've worked at, I'm that person that's going to knock at someone's door and say, hey, can we chat for a minute? Can we have coffee? Can we go on a walk? Because it's that time. And I'll say I get, just like everyone else, where I can get wrapped up in emails, I can get wrapped up in conference calls, and all the things that I want to say more tactical, where you're getting stuff done, but to sit down and to have a conversation, find out what excites people, find out what's going on, what impact. Being at a university and working in the area of DEI, my office cannot be the only area of the organization that's talking about DEI. So that means we need to go out and we need to talk to our peers and talk about their areas and find out, are there mentors that's here who want to be of service to students that may not even work in a student-facing position? If I know that, and we have something that's going on either after work, on the weekends, during lunchtime, then those are colleagues that I can reach out on the other side of campus and say, hey, this is going on. Our students would love to meet you and hear your story and get to know who you are.
Mm-hmm. That's all great, because I also know that oftentimes the populations who are margin or folks who are from marginalized populations usually aren't going to, come up and tell you exactly what's on their mind, right? And so including them, or providing a space for inclusivity where you're inviting them in versus waiting for them to, tell you what's going on, is really key. It's a cultural thing. And again, I think this ties back nicely to understanding the culture and dynamics of your institution, where things are going well, where some things could be improved, and how to find out how to navigate the politics of what is going on in your campus. And so I know that you have been spending some time really working in communications, right? Communications, what goes out from the university, messages, and you also have thought about that in terms of branding, right? So people don't always think about messaging being part of branding, right? And I know that you have had some conversations with people really trying to educate them on the importance of, when this goes out from this institution, it's important that several eyes are on it, because you can't just spit something out and think that you aren't going to have some kind of impact, whether that's positive, negative. It's never neutral, right? So when an institution has a great communication, then everything's fine. But then when the institution has someone putting something out, maybe they put it out on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, and somebody sees it, and then the first thing they want to say is, oh, Professor X or President so-and-so or faculty member this or student that said blah, blah, blah. And that means that the institution is behind it. And it could hurt the brand of the institution, right?
Absolutely. One of the things that's just really, and yes, I would say for an academic institution in any organization, we really need to be cognizant of what's being communicated. We also need, and not just from the standpoint of ensuring, of course, we want to ensure that what is being communicated is accurate. But we also want to make sure that the people of the organization know about the communication, because at any point in time, we're ambassadors of that organization. So if something's going out from from an area in which we're being supportive to students, then that is important for all of us to know that, so that when students come to us, we can be of a greater resource. And I would even say, regardless of where you're sitting in an organization, and I'll say here for academia, when a communication is going out, regardless of where it's coming from, begin to ask yourself, how does that communication inform or impact the area in which I lead? And how can I support that communication so that at the end of the day, when someone sees you from XY organization, they know that you are in sync with that organization's mission, vision, values, and what they communicate. So that, yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I think that it's important on the front end that you identify how you align with your place of employment, right? What are your personal mission, vision, and philosophy, and what is theirs, so that we have, I like to call when I'm coaching people, is a good fit, right? So sometimes people take a job and then they're happy to get the job only to find out that they're having a lot of turmoil because it's misaligned. So they're getting a good paycheck, but they're not really happy, right? Or things are happening that you're like, I don't really know if I signed up for this. Well, yes, you did, because the organization tells you exactly who you are. And, not every place is a good fit for everyone. So as you're saying, how the institution's communications come out, well, you can see them, generally speaking. There's a newsletter or, an update that goes to the faculty, the staff, and even the students. I've been at places where the president would send out messages and they would talk about, here are the high points, and here's some areas that we could probably need some help in. So reading those and staying abreast of your institution's communications are important, because a lot of times people have put thought into those, and you want to be able to know like where you stand on these issues. So all good stuff. Yes, please.
Absolutely. And I just want to, as from a case study perspective, I want to share this, is that at our institution, and most academic institutions will have a blog. And one of the things that I had heard from a lot of our students is that they did not see representation of themselves in that blog. And I kind of scratched my head and I was like, no, the blogs I've seen, they're sharing stories. And so in my area, what we've done is on a monthly basis is that we go through the university blogs and we reprint blogs that's around students of color, students from different backgrounds, students that are from BIPOC, marginalized, whatever, to show, and we post those stories throughout our centers. One way to not only highlight the good work, but to also say, hey, this is occurring in our institution. It's just a matter of who needs to have to send out maybe an extra communication just so that people can see that it's being communicated. And so in our area, we print them out and make them available so that we're demonstrating and showing what we're doing as a university to tell everyone's story.
Mm-hmm. So this is all excellent information, and I so appreciate your perspective on these areas. So what are some things that individuals can do, administrators, faculty? You are a faculty member as well. You've had adjunct positions and had sort of a, administrative path and a faculty path, and not everybody has. So what are some tips that you could give people around, professional development, how to, make them more attractive as a candidate if they're applying for a place? There's got to be some things that you would know and nobody else would know?
Well, I think so. I think any organization is going to always say that there's always room for help, assistance, and getting better and being better. And so I think one of the things that anyone can do, whether you're an academic or not, is just get involved, whether it is your employee group. One of the things that I did when I first started, I want to say maybe it was after my first year here, I got involved with an inclusive community group, and that was pretty much a group of faculty, staff, administrators, and students who would come together on a monthly basis and talk about how we can be much more inclusive as a community, a university community. And being a part of that, it might sound like, well, you should be a part of it, but you'll be surprised of how much information you really don't know until you make yourself available. And if your organization or your academic institution does not have something, then I probably would say you are the best person to start looking at spearheading it, getting with some colleagues and saying that there is a need for it. That's the biggest thing that I can give, because not only does it give you much more greater aspect of what's going on in your organization, especially the parts that you may not be around, but it also helps you build relationships with the people that you work with.
I think that's great. And it really encapsulates much of what we've talked about today. So the sense of belonging, right? There are some institutions that have affinity groups, but guess what? That's a fairly new term as well. So somebody went somewhere and said, we need a space where these people can, come together and feel safe. The other part of joining it early on, like you said, is it helped you sort of socialize yourself to the institution. Like, what don't I know here? What's not on the website? What didn't they tell me when I took this job? And so going to one of those community forums or joining a task force or group, you will really find out the lay of the land in a way that, can sometimes surprise you in a very good way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I almost say that if you're looking to be upwardly mobile in the sense of positions, it is imperative. It is imperative to look at what councils exist, what committees exist, and and see if there's anything that has an alignment with desires that you have, or can you do, if you plan on making a career change even within that organization, heck, you can be on a council that might need, and I gave the example earlier, if you're going into marketing, they might need someone that's going to help do the communication, the social media for that group, and you could be that person that's doing it. And so now you are exercising a skill, you're possibly learning a new skill, and you're also exercising it, and people are seeing that as well.
That's right. And so people then associate you in a very different way outside of your current position, and it elevates your profile, right? So I know that you are a published author, and I want to share a little bit about your book with our audience, and know that you are offering a special, and you'll have to click on the link included in this to get the special for the book. But Monique, just tell us about what sort of led you to publishing this book around personal branding.
So it started with actually identifying and understanding that as social media became popular, and just seeing how people were representing themselves on social media, and kind of scratching my head and thinking to myself, why do people only think that the Oprahs of the world should be responsible in what they say and how they say it in media? And so it really forced me to kind of come up with a workshop that kind of talked about how you can leverage social media, not only to market yourself, but to also understand you are a personal brand. And usually one of the things you can think of is, how do people receive you and describe you? That's usually an indicator of your personal brand. And so you can either be that person that lets other people define it, or you can get on the front end of it and say, I'm going to manage my personal brand. And so from there, from creating a workshop, went to creating a class, and the class was very successful. And what was really interesting about the class is that it ranged in age. It could be anywhere from someone who is 18 years old working on their undergraduate degree to someone who wants to make a career change that's mid-level. And so in that class, it's all about what you can do to manage your personal brand. And I did not want that class to just be a class that was created and it just blew in the wind one day. I wanted it to have some kind of longevity. And so the best thing that I thought of is, how about write a book and make it a short pamphlet that really got to the point, in which it can be much more, help people to be much more introspective and give ideas and exercises on how to manage your personal brand. And that's where the birth of Truly You came into play.
Great. I love that. I love that story. I am so happy that you were able to take all of your experience and pour it into this course, the workshop, your students, people that you coached over the years, and ultimately your book. And I know that the institution, your current institution, is benefiting from all your great expertise and experience, and just your light shining there. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
I am Dr. 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗲 𝗵𝗶𝗽, your academic career coach, and thanks for joining us.